they're in the Big 12 championship.
The legacy of this team is based on how they finished.
I do feel the sense of urgency in practice this week has been there.
It better be, because it's a huge game with Arizona State coming up Saturday. BYU football, number 14 in the country, 9-1 in a battle with ASU for a spot in the Big 12 title game potentially. There are tie-breaking scenarios and whatnot we'll lay out should BYU lose, but we're not going to go there.
Let's not think that.
Until it happens. We're thinking win. Cougars are trying to hold on, Jason, to not fizzle out at the end here. Had a 9-0 start. This weekend feels massive. So, given preseason expectations, 9-0 start. Is it a playoff or bust situation for BYU football?
Look, I can't go there. I just can't. And look, we are all hoping. And look, there's a real chance BYU still can do this, all right?
Yeah.
It's not crazy that BYU can go down and beat Arizona State, okay? And then I think BYU, at bare minimum this year, is going to have 10 wins. At bare minimum.
That's not saying a lot, though.
But
That's saying one out of the next.
No, but what I'm saying is you put that into context on what the entire free world pegged BYU at before the year.
Saudi Arabia had 6 wins for BYU.
I can't go down that road that if BYU stumbles towards the end and gets left out of the college football playoff, that the season is a bust. Everybody and their grandma was expecting 4 or 5 wins this year. And BYU is going to more than double that.
We need to pull all of Orem to find out if that's accurate.
I just can't get behind that and we're all going to be, it's going to stink if BYU doesn't make it, especially because of where they were and the position that they put themselves in. Yes. So if they don't make it, it's certainly, there's going to be a lot of heartbroken BYU fans. And there's going to be a lot of heartbroken BYU players and coaches if they don't make it. But I just can't go down that road that it is a bust season if they don't make it. This team's still going to get, again, in my opinion, at least a minimum of 10 wins. And you're still going to go to a very good bowl game this year, even if it's not in the college football playoff. So I just can't get behind the playoff or bust scenario.
Yeah, and what is bust in this conversation? Bust is Utah's season. That's a bust. They were expected to be in the playoff, win this league. They're not even close. They may not make a bowl game. That's a bust, okay? And any team like it. I'm not pointing out Utah specific. Well, I am because it's Rebel. I am. Okay, BYU, it's not a bust. If you win 10-plus games and you go to Alamo or Liberty or Pop-Tart, there's a space between this is the best thing ever, amazing playoff, and bust. There's a space there. And in fact, it's closer to playoff than not of we won double-digit games. We overachieved, over-succeeded the standard. You go to a good bowl game. Can you finish with BYU can finish with 11 or 12 wins and not go to the playoffs.
I know.
So that scenario exists, which is crazy. Let's say BYU loses to Arizona State, beats Houston, doesn't get the tiebreaker, doesn't go to the Big 12 title game, and goes to a bowl game and wins. You're talking about a 12-win season. Now, certainly, as you heard in that music video, the legacy of this team is going to depend on how they finish here. If they can get to the playoff, get to the Big 12 title game, give themselves a chance, they have a chance to be one of the top 10 greatest BYU teams.
Yes.
They also have a chance to slip into the 01 and 90 category, where those teams were in the top 10 late in the season like this and lost a couple games at the end, and they fizzled out, and we're disappointed with how those seasons ended up. But there's a lot in front of BYU still. The hope is that they can get to the Big 12 title game and have a chance to get to the playoff. Like we talked about, there's not an at-large 2-loss thing for BYU into the playoff. But there is hey, beat Arizona State. And there's even a lose to Arizona State situation where you can still get into the Big 12 title game. You need Kansas to beat Colorado. You need Kansas State to beat Iowa State among them. So, which are not crazy, by the way. I just dissed Utah. Let me credit Utah with something. Spencer said this on the air, or off the air yesterday to me. Utah, teams that play Utah the next week are like 2-7. They just get beat up. The physicality of the Utes. Is Colorado going to be that team against Kansas this week? You're rooting for Kansas. Yeah, you're rooting for Kansas if you're a BYU team.
You were all about not liking Kansas last week. Well,
now we're about liking the
Jayhawks.
Absolutely. They can completely reshape the Big 12 picture. They have with Iowa State, kind of pushing them to the back. They've knocked BYU off the undefeated perch, although BYU's still in first in the Big 12. So back to playoffs or bust. It's not a bust, but it would be extremely disappointing, a la 01 and 90. Where 90 was in the top 5 for like 6 weeks. They were awesome. And then you lose a couple games to Hawaii and then Texas A&M in the bowl game. And you're like, we don't talk about 90 as one of the great years. We talk about the Heisman and the Miami game, but we should be talking about the Dominator and Luke Staley in 01 as one of the great seasons. We don't, because they lost the last two. So the importance of the Arizona State game cannot be overstated at this point.
Yeah, look, of all the scenarios that are out there, the one that BYU is really hoping for is that they just continue to win. And then everything else takes care of itself. You win your final 2 regular season games, then you are for sure in the Big 12 title game, and then you go win that and you get the at-large bid. You take it out of the hands of anybody that's making decisions on at-large. Now, if things...
Because, there is no at-large. It's for BYU with 2 losses, it would seem. They're not going to out-at-large Georgia or Alabama.
Based off of what they have shown so far, they probably are not going to give BYU the benefit of the doubt with 1 loss as an at-large. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, that's not a scenario that will happen. The one loss at-large, right?
It's just
you either win the Big 12 title game or you
that's
don't.
Where it's at right now. And
if you win, it's not an at-large, it's automatic. If you lose, you're 2 loss. So one loss at-large doesn't exist.
So BYU can control. And what I do like about this scenario is that BYU, how many times all year long have we talked about it, the players talked about it, that they feel a little slighted, right? And those are the games where BYU has come out and, in most cases, played their best football. And it's when they felt disrespected going to UCF as an underdog, when they were the team that was on a roll and UCF was on a losing streak. And when they go to these, it's usually happened in these road games where they felt they were being disrespected. And obviously we know BYU's not lost on the road so far this year.
They're one of 4 teams that are at least 5-0 or better on the road. Oregon is one of the others.
I like the scenario that is playing out right now, that this BYU team is a little upset with the way things are playing out nationally. They're a little upset with...
they dropped us 8 spots for a dog. Yeah. Whatever you want to summon.
This team has fed off of that all year long, and I think that bodes well for this team this week.
The difference, I guess, in this game is that Arizona State is a better opponent than they have played in this situation on the road.
I would agree with you on that.
This year. In fact, you look at kind of BYU's road games. At SMU, that's the best road team you've played all year. That was early. That was an incredible performance. No touchdowns allowed. You win by 3. Best win by far on the schedule. At Wyoming, at Baylor, at UCF, at Utah. Most of those teams have a losing record, except for SMU and Baylor at this point, right? So you haven't played the toughest road schedule given the quality of those teams and whatnot. But they're Power 5, Power 4 opponents. Like, this is a new era for BYU. These are all tough games. Huge game with Arizona State. And by the way, I want to bring up what we were talking about with the playoffs or bust. It's like, and I brought it up yesterday, reacting to the playoff poll. I am surprised by how many people are like, oh, man, it would stink to be an 11 or 12 seed in the playoff and not get that bye. I'm like, are you serious? But being in the playoffs would be amazing.
Yeah.
BYU is not so good that we can be picky about seeding to me. Right. Like, BYU is very good, but they're not like blowing fools out and deserve X, Y, Z. You got to win to deserve a bye. Like, BYU will pass Boise State should they win the next 3. I firmly believe that. I made my argument yesterday for it. But the idea of being disappointed by some seed in the playoff, are you serious? You got to beat Arizona State just to have a chance to beat Houston, to have a chance to get in the Big 12 title game. Like, all these dominoes have to fall before we worry about that.
Here's one of the other differences in the Arizona State game that is different from the other scenarios that we were just talking about. They have a lot to play for. They're playing 100%. For as much as BYU is.
Yes.
So that is a different dynamic that BYU has not faced late in the year like this in the previous scenarios.
Yes.
But it still doesn't take away the way BYU has responded in these situations.
It's a better team than BYU's played, the last couple of weeks. Like, Utah was tough for the obvious reasons of rival and there's quality across that Utah roster. They haven't played well on offense specifically, right? Yeah. Oh, here we go, Arizona State.
All right, so it goes without saying that Saturday is a massive game, and it's not just for this season, but what this season could become, and what this season could become not just right now, but down the road when we look back on this year. There's a lot at stake. So the Arizona State game has the most at stake for BYU football since when? We kind of touched on some of these.
Yes, and Spencer and I were talking about it a little bit earlier this week, but let's formalize it. Since last week, you were number 6 and 9-0. How is it bigger than anything before that?
And it's the next one.
If you have to go before this year, 2021 Boise State, BYU's 5-0. They're number 10. They're at home on October 9th, and they lose at home. That was a tough one because you were in the top 10 right there. 22, you're 2-0. You're number 12. You're at Oregon. You get blown out. That sticks out. If you're talking late in the season like this, Shep, November, December games. Coastal Carolina.
Yep.
That was an early December game in 2020. BYU's trying to crack into a New Year's Six game. They play it on a short week like Wednesday. They're like, all right, we're doing this. And then they go and they come up 1 yard short. That was tough. And I will never watch these highlights and not feel strong emotion about here's the last play. Oh, it's so tough.
So close.
So tough.
And the hits on Zach.
Zach Wilson before the end of the first half still riles me up. I don't like watching those clips. It makes me upset. You know how the Chargers a couple weeks ago, Justin Herbert kind of got twisted up, and the offensive lineman just smashed that guy. I was like, that's what I wanted to see from BYU going to the locker room. But it's a big game.
Yep.
Name your game, and I'll agree with you. It's a huge game.
And you touched on one. The very first scenario that came to my mind when I thought of this question was 2001. Where BYU,
that far.
Yeah, when BYU was going for the BCS, and it looked like BYU was going to do it, and they were being slighted.
So 12-0,
so
headed
you're
to Hawaii.
12-0.
You beat Mississippi State on a 9/11 rescheduled game.
But in that game, Luke Staley gets hurt, breaks the ankle, and then he's out. Yep. And then you go to Hawaii, and they put up a 72 spot on you.
Brandon Doman dislocated his shoulder in the game.
And it all falls apart. But that season, that was the one where BYU was going to be the BCS buster.
Yes.
And so for me, that was the very first scenario since that came to my mind. And another one that was brought up, Wyoming in 1996. That 1990. And a lot of these
12-1 at that point.
Yeah, a lot of these you look at them after the fact. You know they're big at the time, but then when you look back on them and you realize just how big that was, obviously in the WAC championship game.
This is almost in black and white. Like it's not in black and white, but it's almost. By the way, I'm standing on the field under the left field goal post in there. Right
I see you.
Yeah,
no, I don't.
I'm 13 at the time. Yeah, Spencer's up there.
But do you have a perm in the back of your hair?
I did not. I was not as cool as you. That's for sure. Our question of the day is this. Did you have a perm when you were little or no? Are your expectations for BYU football right now to make the college football playoff or bust? What do you think? This is a polarizing question, right? At Y for Life 1984. You got it in the handle. On X. That's the hope, but this team wasn't even supposed to make a bowl game in the preseason. The season was never a college football playoff or bust. Although at this point it would be a letdown if they don't at least make the Big 12 title game. That's the hope, right? You got to win Saturday to feel like you have a great shot. If BYU does not beat Arizona State, there are scenarios where they can still make it, but they have to beat Houston and scoreboard watch, okay?
Yeah, you're relying on other people to lose.
Yes, people have put those scenarios out. We're going to put them out on Monday should BYU lose, but we are thinking about a win right now. We're trying to manifest that reality. At Walter James _6 on X. Conference championship is the goal. The chips will fall where they will after. Yeah, 100%. You got to get to that game, and then now you have to win said game.